Now we move on to Middle East. Israeli military vehicles were seen operating in the West Bank town of Qabatiya as Israeli forces launched a security raid following a deadly attack in northern Israel. The operation comes a day after a Palestinian assailant rammed a man with a vehicle and stabbed a woman in northern Israel on Friday. Both victims later passed away, according to Israeli emergency services. Israeli police said the attacker, who was from the occupied West Bank, was shot and wounded by a civilian at the scene before being taken to hospital. During the raid in Qabatiya, Israeli forces imposed a curfew, shutting down secondary roads and detained several residents for questioning. One detainee said those taken were asked whether they knew the reason behind the military operations. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said he had ordered a forceful response in Qabatiya, identifying it as the hometown of the assailant, and said the operation was aimed at preventing further attacks.
أخذني كلب شدي لورا وحطني بالجيب من ورا، بس ركبني كلب الجيب كان يحط الكلبشات على وجهي، المرابط على وجهي، وبعدها أخذنا على لحد بيت العملية، خذونا جوا وصار يحقق معنا شو رايكم بالوضع العملي وش رايكم بالوضع العملية، ما حدا يحكي لأنه اللي بدي يحكي بده ياكل كتلي، وبعدها صار يسأل فينا بتعرفوا انتوا ليش جايين هون؟ قلنا له لا، قال لا بتعرفوا انتوا ليش جايين مشان العملية هون. قلنا له لا مش عاملين نحن ولا شيء نروا.
الفرق بين الاجتياح هذا والسابق انه هذا مشدد اكثر ومنع تجول البلد وسكرت كل الطرق وتسكرت كل طرق البلد الفرعية والرئيسية. شايف بالاضافة لهذا الحكي يعني المنخفضات الجوية القادمة ادت لضغوطات اكبر على الناس. يعني الحاجز انا هين باب بيتي يعني بدي اطلع اخوي مريض على المستشفى ما عرفتش اطلع تفاجأت لقيت الحاجز هنا.
Now for this discussion we welcome Mr. Martin Reitz. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Ecuador. Thank you very much, Mr. Reitz, for joining us again. Now looking at this, what more can you tell us about this ongoing situation, continuing situation in towards Palestinians living under the occupied force of Israel, and as an occupying force, what is Israel's responsibility while conducting these kind of raids in civilian areas, which impacts these people's lives?
Yeah, the big problem in this situation is that in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and in general in the Middle East conflict, separating innocent civilians with terror cells is very difficult. It's very sad when innocent civilians get harmed by any intervention by the Israeli military. But in the last weeks, Israel has been targeted of a lot of terror attacks from terror cells from the West Bank, and it has been widely reported that the Israeli response is always the demolition of the terrorist house. The problem here is how we can prove that the family was involved in the terror attack or not. This is a very difficult situation, and I think the only solution is trying to stop this terror to be carried out by enforcing security in the border between the West Bank and Israel.
And how do you think this expanding settlement in the West Bank affects the security dynamics and a Palestinian resistance there?
Yeah, this is also a very difficult situation because under international law, these settlements are illegal. However, after the Oslo Agreement, it is completely legal that Israel has a military presence in the areas that were put for Israeli control. However, according to international law, only the military should be there and not civilian people, something that has been not taken in consideration by the Israeli government. However, the problem here is not only the settlements. The problem here is also the radicalization of the Palestinians in the West Bank. We have infiltration of Hamas and other terror groups like Islamic Jihad, which they're not going to give up on their terror activity, even if Israel stops the construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. This ideology will never end. I think the radicalization is a problem, and I think one thing is the right of the Palestinian Authority to engage in diplomacy or asking for help for the UN, and another completely different topic is terror, which is never which will never be accepted.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Martin Sayrites for joining us today from Ecuador and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news